Every voice matters, and every story deserves to be heard. This is Behind the Wall Voices for Justice, where we bring you real conversations about injustice, resilience, and the fight for freedom. Join me in my discussion today with a paralegal as we break down the walls of ignorance. Okay, that's good to know.
Mm,
Knowledge. So a third point was, or second point was knowledge of the substance. Um,
hmm
should we just go to relevant in a code of conduct? Like, because is knowledge of the substance circling back to his indictment?
Uh, yeah, and I'll just say this.
Mm,
You have to have knowledge of that what the personnel, the government may not have to prove the exact type of controlled substance, but you have to have knowledge that what's being trafficked is a controlled substance.
mm-hmm.
And the way that his indictment was worded, it relieved the government of its burden of proving that what it is that was being trafficked, that he knew that it was a controlled substance.
Mm-hmm. How?
So according to the Fifth and Sixth Amendment, he can't be guilty because that that the way that it's worded, technically, it doesn't state a crime. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't.
Mm-hmm. And it's so funny. We have a family member. I forgot what she does, but we have a family member like,
Mhm,
hey, can you help us? I thought she was an English major, but she's like, hey, can you help us
mhm,
draft a letter
mhm,
for knowledge and just the wordage of this? And she was like, no, oh geez, I kind of lost my point, but she was like, no, you
mhm,
need a lawyer. You need to go get a pro bono. He has a key. They can help him, but I'm um just go ahead and draft up a letter and because you
mhm,
need specific legal terminology in your letter to
mhm,
help him. But I'm like, because I didn't get it, so of course she won't get it
mhm,
I think we
mhm,
just spoke to her for 2 3 days, so she won't get it in 2 3 days. But she didn't
mhm,
understand that we were trying to say this the word the knowledge and
mhm,
how they found mm, the knowledge that they didn't prove he knowingly knew it was a controlled substance properly,
mhm.
and we're trying
Right.
to explain that to people, and that again legal jargon needs to be in layman's term for citizens to understand, right? So that's why
Mhm,
we
mhm,
wanted the expert English teacher to be able to write their opinion and their piece on that
mhm.
phrase knowledge knowingly in controlled substance. And but she didn't get it, so I was like, I'll just let her talk.
And it's yeah, well, listen, it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating, and to mention, to delve into acquitted conduct. It's sad that counts, or that conduct was still used to influence his overall sentence. Now, what's even more tragic is this: if he were sentenced today, chances are they wouldn't be able to use it.
Mm-hmm.
But because it wasn't made retroactive, he can't use it.
Wow.
That's sad.
Yeah.
It's sad because even people who don't really know about the law, everybody knows what it means to be found guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.
That's mostly
Everybody
what
knows.
all people know. They just know that, and like, oh, everything
Right,
should be fair. That. But there's so
right,
many other things we
right.
don't know.
And then what happens when you find out that it's not fair? You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
What does that do to your faith in the system? What does that do to your faith in the country that you would
Mm-hmm.
allow people to languish in jail for something that a jury of their peers said that they didn't do?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
And
how barbaric is that?
yeah, and I think most of us as a community, we do know that we can't really have faith in the system, but then there's so many of us out there. Like before I think my dad's been trying to do this since he's been in. But I think we've been doing this for 2 3 years. Had the Manumit Me business.
Mhm,
Oh, I forgot my point again. But oh, it's just
mhm.
crazy. Like before that, I was just going about my day, and I knew the system was crazy and the government was terrible. But I was like, what can I do? So I'm glad I'm
Right.
doing this, and it's slow moving, but I'll try to get there.
That's it.
Like I'm about to say, I'm no activist, but it starts somewhere. It starts somewhere.
I said, you have to continue to chip away, right? Because it's so easy to let despair overwhelm you, especially when you're dealing with the criminal justice system.
Hmm.
Despair sometimes it becomes your best friend. Because it seems like you are you. It's like you have a ice pick, right? And
Hmm.
you just stand in front of this big old mountain, and you like
I think it's about to cut
you
out soon.
hit the ice pick, and one little pebble fall off of this huge mountain
Yeah.
and you're like, do I have to just keep hitting this ice pick and this one little piece of rock gonna fall? Do I got the strength to break down this whole thing? And I think that you have to be committed to it because
Hmm.
there were a lot of dark days. I did 30 years, so I know that there were a lot of dark days.
Hmm.
But the one thing that I held on to is this: when I grasped the law, I never let anyone tell me that I was wrong about what because I've always been like very good when it comes to reading and comprehension. So it was just a matter of me understanding what was in front of me. And what I'll say is the same thing I told him is that it may not happen overnight, but I think that collectively, uh, not only can we bring him home, but we can make an example for others, to be inspired. Because when I remember leaving, jail, and I remember guys having tears in their eyes, some were happy that I left, but then some guys, they told me that, man, now that we see you gone, we don't have no more hope. And I'm like, don't think like that.
Hmm.
Don't think like that.
Hmm.
I'm I'm transitioning to something else, but I
Yeah.
won't leave you behind.
Yeah.
I know where I come from. So because once you take hope from a person, it's like the person is almost like they're
Yeah.
functionally dead.
Yeah.
So
There's
just know that we're gonna get it done. We're gonna get it
hmm.
done. Them.
Yeah.
Yeah, people are not capable of having empathy until it happens to them, and then
Hmm.
everybody wants this understanding.
Hmm.
So I think that you handled it correctly in that how long am I going to be doing this? I'm going to be doing it until this doesn't happen, not only to my father but to anyone else, because it can happen to anybody.
Hmm.
And I like the number of families that I've come across, who even when I was in, I can remember this guy had life, and I was sitting in the visiting hall, and I had and I got his life sentence reversed, and I remember sitting there, and I was talking to my wife, and uh the guy's mom, she was just so overwhelmed, with joy, and I just looking at her, and I could just see her eyes just welling up, and he was like, man, when I saw him later, he was like, man, my mom was in there crying. I'm like, yeah, man, because listen, like this is a very traumatic thing we dealing with, man. We can be, we normalize it, but like the people who are attached to us, a part of them is locked up too,
Hmm.
and it's a painful thing,
Hmm.
so it's what you're doing is a good thing because especially in our community the number one killer, it's not a gun, it's ignorance.
Hmm.
Like because a lot of times we don't know what we're up against and we don't know what kind of things that this country has done to us in the past. It's like whenever something happens to us, um, the ends always justify the means.
Hmm.
So, even when you take something like acquitted conduct, before that thing even, before judges even, started, and I'll give you a brief history on it, on the relevant conduct and the acquitted conduct. There was right after because all of this really became a fact that after the Sentencing Reform Act became law in 87. So, uh, when I first really started to understand the law, I was like, let me see what judges felt about this, when this whole relevant conduct slash acquitted conduct thing, came about. Because relevant conduct is part of acquitted conduct, but relevant conduct within itself is problematic too. But so there was a case in 1990, right? Because this is when judges at this point they didn't know which way they were going to go as far as saying, well, can a person be sentenced for something that the jury acquitted him of it? Are we allowed to do this? And so this judge, he wrote his opinion. It was a dissenting opinion, which meaning that the other two judges on the appellate panel, they already had ruled that the judge could do this. And this judge that wrote the dissent, he said, I think that it violates every fundamental norm, that it violates the Fifth, the Sixth, the 14th Amendment to tell a person that you're going to be sentenced for something that you've been acquitted of. And I don't think, as judges, I don't think that this is something that we should tread lightly. This is a very serious thing that we're considering doing. And that's the type of approach that you have to have because you're talking about sentencing a person for something that a jury of their peers said that they didn't do. And the problem, that's problematic within itself. But then when you look at relevant conduct, even if you remove acquitted conduct from relevant conduct and you just look at what relevant conduct is, right? Relevant conduct came along at that time too, and it was what they called it is truth in sentencing, meaning that we want to sentence a person for their real offense. So in sentencing a person for their real offense, I'll use your father's case as an example. Okay, you say you want to sentence a person for their real offense, but now you're only asking the jury to find that the indictment, even though we know that it was flawed, let's just assume that the indictment was normal, which it wasn't. Five keys or more. Okay. Now, 5 keys or more. Some people will say, well, if the jury is asked to find or more, then what's the problem if he's sentenced for technically 100 kilograms? What's the problem? Well, the problem is this, because under the guidelines, that or more, it stops at 15. So you say 5 to 15 keys, or it may go up to 50. I think it may be either 5 to 15 or 5 to 50. We'll just say 15 for argument's sake right now, right? So that means that the jury's finding him guilty of 5 keys or more, right? So they're not so all we know is that he has been adjudicated guilty for 5 keys or more. Now, the reason why that 5 to 15 is important because his base offense level for that may just be 34, right? So for that base offense level 34, they say, okay, well, so he can expect to walk into the courtroom and get a sentence of anywhere from maybe 9 to 13 years. But what happens is once his PSI is prepared, now that 5 to 15, because they're going back to the trial transcripts and say, oh, well, this person said he had this person said he had that, this person said he had this. Well, the jury wasn't asked all of these questions about drug quantity. But what
Mm-hmm.
happens is you start looking at that PSI, and that 5 keys quickly turn into 98, 100 keys. Now
Mm-hmm.
that has real life significance because now just imagine he has a daughter. He said, okay, you know what? I screwed up. Okay, I'm going to get 9 years or whatever. My daughter's 2 at the time. Okay, you know what? She'll be maybe 10 or 11 when I get home. And that's tragic within itself. But you know what? I screwed up. I'm going to pay my debt to society. I'm going to come out. My daughter's going to be 11. Well, that's not what the PSI says. The PSI says that there was 98 to 105 kilograms. And again, this is not something that a finding that's made beyond a reasonable doubt. This is that thing we talked about, preponderance of the evidence.
Mm-hmm.
So now the lawyer comes, he puts this PSI here. He's looking at this PSI. Now the PSI says, well, whoa, my base offense level is not 32 now because now I'm being found guilty of or I'm going to be sentenced for 100 keys. Oh, and then they made a finding that I was a leader. The jury was never found, they were never asked to find if I was a leader. So now you're going to tack on an additional 4 more points. So now, whereas I thought I was going to get, 9 years or 10 years, and my daughter was going to be maybe 10 or 11, now I'm looking at 360 months to possibly life.
Mm-hmm.
So now this is a whole nother discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And you walk into that courtroom and These things have been found that you possess this gun, even though the jury said that you didn't have a gun. Under relevant conduct, they can still come back and say, "Oh, well, you know what? He had a gun, so we're going to increase his base offense level by 2 points." Oh, he
Mm-hmm.
was a leader. Oh, we're going to increase that by another 4 points. Oh, he had 100 plus keys. Okay, so we're going to increase it by another 8 to 10 points. So now it's like the jury's not asked to consider any of these things,
Mm-hmm.
but these things have like real life impact
Mm-hmm.
because now where he's saying, you know what, baby girl, I made a mistake and I'm gonna be gone for a few years. Now it's possible, 20 years is a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And now you just bypass 20. Now we're talking about 360 months or more. That's a
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and that's a bitter pill to swallow.
And then like it, some people may be saying, watching this, saying, "Oh, well, I'm never gonna sell drugs." For one, they can plan it on you. They can if they doing this, they can plan it on you, say whatever they want about you. That they can assume whatever they want about you.
Easily.
Assume that you knew this thing in the bag, you knew what it is and
Easily.
was. And then another thing, like an example my dad said was, imagine if you get down on your luck. You're like, oh, I need to get some money. You steal something
Mhm.
from an old lady. You take her bag. You push her. You take the money out the bag. You drop the bag. Then you run across the street and you jaywalk. So say you were found guilty of theft.
Mhm.
Um, what do you say? You're found guilty of theft, but then they don't find you guilty of those other things, but they see you did
Mhm.
it and they see in the cameras or whatever. You push the old lady. That's assault. They tack that on. You threw the bag down on the ground because you didn't need the bag, but that's littering. They tack that on. You
Mhm.
jaywalk. They tack that on. And what you think was like maybe a couple months, now you got a couple years.
Exactly. And that's exactly how it happens. And the thing is this. If you're going to tack all of these things onto a person's sentence, my thing is this. What's the problem with asking a jury to find these things?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because the judges, they're bureaucrats.
Mm-hmm.
So and you have judges who know this is wrong. I have read ad nauseum about judges who have decried the use of relevant conduct. They have used terms, flowery terms, to describe it as
Mm-hmm.
evil,
Mm-hmm.
inherently evil. So it is, and this is why I say that the federal courts, this is why they won't allow cameras in a federal courtroom. Now, you take one of the more high profile cases like Puffy, for example, where he was acquitted of these things. Now, see, now that it's going to be somewhat more problematic to use acquitted conduct. Had this happened 4 or 5 years ago, everything that they said that the jury said he didn't do, oh, it would still be on the table, and he could be sentenced accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
So it is it we have to do a better job of educating ourselves as to how these mechanisms work. I mean, like I find myself being, dispirited when I ask people, just simple questions. Name the three branches of government, name what they do,
Mm-hmm.
and to hear people unable to answer that question, it hurts me because our ignorance is always used against us.
Mm-hmm.
And anything that happens in this country, there's an old saying that shit runs downhill. And so when it happens to somebody else, I never applaud it because I'm always mindful, well, hey, if it happened to that person, black folks better watch out
Mm-hmm.
because chances are it's going to happen to us, and it's going to be even more tragic. You know,
Yeah.
so what you're doing, if one person watching this podcast walk away and they have questions about relevant conduct or acquitted conduct or an indictment, it's a win
Mm-hmm.
because you know you have to educate. And
Yeah.
I think once you begin to educate, right, our society, we are uh we are almost apathetic, to human suffering. people believe, oh, well, this guy's behind bars, or well, he pretty much bargained for, for whatever it is he get. But just because a person is behind bars, let's get one thing clear. They don't lose their humanity,
Mm-hmm.
once they walk behind those walls, or once they're put behind those walls. They don't lose their humanity. And you learn a lot about a society when you look at how they treat their prisoners.
Mm-hmm.
And because prisoners are the most vulnerable.
Yeah.
So
I've
but I just think that we have to educate ourselves, and the
yeah.
public, they have to be made aware of what's going on. And people have to ask questions like, why is it that they don't have cameras in federal court? Why is it that the public can't see a PSI? It's because they would be appalled at what they saw, and what
Mm-hmm.
kind of factors that judges are used to take a person's sentence from 4 to 5 years up to fucking 360 months to life.
Mm-hmm.
And it always, it amuses me in one instance, and it infuriates me in another. In that, for example, you take your father's case, and a prosecutor, okay, you may be a well-meaning prosecutor, but this is the problem I have, is that you'll say that, let's say people cooperate against him, right? Now, these people cooperate. Now, you're telling the jury, and you're telling society that, as a prosecutor, you want to make the community safe. Okay, this is what you say. But how are you making the community safer just because this person chooses to testify against your father? Now, this person could have been facing up to life too. Now
Mm-hmm.
he testifies and he walks right out the door.
Mm-hmm.
How are you protecting the community doing that? How?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me how. Because if this person, and they can have all kind of violence in their past, but you're
Yeah.
letting this person right back out the door, but you're going to look at the public, and you're going to look them square in the face and say, well, I put this person away, and that's protecting the public. Well, what about this person that you just let go because he
Mm-hmm.
chose to cooperate with you? Does that mean now that because he chose to cooperate, that he's all of a sudden a good person? When most of these
Mm-hmm.
people, when they get out, they reoffend.
Mm-hmm.
They
Did
reoffend.
you hear about that? I think it was down in South Carolina. This guy, I think he was on a bus or a train. This guy was just chilling. This girl came on, sat in front of the guy, and
Mhm.
then yeah, you saw that.
I heard about it.
And he had like 14. I think he's been incarcerated 14 times or something like
Mhm.
that, or some. I
Mhm.
was like, wow.
And from what I heard about it, it's like this here, right? The United States made a conscientious effort to do away with, because they said that the guy had a mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
Uh and I'm not 100% sure, but what I do know from being on the inside, see, United States, they don't have mental health institutions like that anymore. They
Mm-hmm.
closed them all down, and they
Mm-hmm.
use prisons as mental health institutions. So it's like, I feel for the woman who was stabbed. She didn't deserve it.
Yeah.
She didn't deserve it. But at the same time, you look at this person and you say, okay, there has to be, something's wrong. Something has to be loose. Because I've seen so many people who suffer from mental health
Mm-hmm.
problem, and you have them in prison. So they're not getting the help that they need. So yeah, we can point to his record and say, well, how is it that he is in and out of jail 14 different times? Well, if you had mental institutions and they were dealing with individuals the way that they should deal with them, then maybe these people can get help.
Mm-hmm.
It just maybe, maybe.
Maybe. There's so many sectors. I always tell people there's 8 billion people in the world. Don't know what's going on through their heads,
No.
but everyone needs help in
Yeah.
some
So
shape or form.
yeah, so and this is why I say it's like a lot of these discussions, they are nuanced, and people, they just want to, like, some people will tell you that like everything is just like it's just cut and dry, and but no, it's not. It's not. Like, these discussions are very nuanced discussions, and this is why, like, I have a very low tolerance for ignorance, because I remember arguing with the professor at Georgetown,
Mm-hmm.
and his logic was that that most of the crime committed in the United States is committed by young black males. I said, but that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
that's not true. I said most crimes in this country are committed by white males. Now, if you want to make the argument about the disproportionate as to whether black youths commit crimes disproportionately, okay, now that's an argument to be had. But but if you're gonna make that argument, you also have to you have to discuss the social factors that that make the conditions what they are for these individuals to
Mm-hmm.
venture out and do what they do. Like all of these things didn't just happen in a vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I say this like it's a nuanced discussion. And this
Yeah.
and your father and I had we had a talk along these lines about I told him that one of the things that I do is this, and I told him what I want to do with him is I think outside the box. I think outside the box because oftentimes we can get tunnel vision on the issue, and I'm like, I won't
Mm-hmm.
let your issue go. I say, but what I have to do is like if I'm going to help you, I have to learn how to protect you. And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
we have to be protected from ourselves because we
Mm-hmm.
get we can get caught up on an issue or caught up on something and we be like, I can't see past it. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, and I've been that person. That was me before where I got so caught up on the issue for me and my co-defendants that I couldn't see past it. And eventually, one of the greatest things that I learned how to do when I was away was to think pragmatically. You have to be able to, you have to be objective when you're doing law, and you have to be pragmatic. You have to be. Without
Mm-hmm.
those two things, you're doomed.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're doomed. So I have to protect him in that I have to take him to where I feel that we stand the greatest chance to get
Mm-hmm.
him out of there. And
Yeah.
that's not to say that we can't still, fight this battle, but I'd much rather you be fighting this battle on this side. You know?
Mm-hmm. The next time I want to talk
Mhm.
about what is it that you're trying to focus on for my dad's case.
Mhm.
I wanted to ask like, oh, is there anything I can do? But I don't know.
Well, I tell you what you can do. This, like throughout the day, even when you at work or whatever, right? When ideas come to your head, jot them down.
Okay.
Because it's we want to bring them home, but it's about enlightenment too.
Okay.
So jot them down, no matter how innocuous you may think it is, jot it down.
Okay.
Because, it's like discussions, believe it or not, having these discussions, they're therapeutic. They're
Mm-hmm.
therapeutic, and I could imagine, with your dad not being here, some of the things that go through your head. I have a son, so I know, like that he suffered while I was gone. So, just having these discussions is therapeutic because, it does instill hope. It
Mm-hmm.
does instill hope. So you get that, and you also get to enlighten people. And if one person asks you, "Hey, what was that thing you were talking about?" And now you could elaborate on it on your
Yeah.
own. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Hey, so
All
that's
right.
so that's the aim of it. The ultimate goal is, of course, to get him home, and in conjunction with that, to give people that look like us and people that don't look like us, to give them more understanding about
Yeah.
exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
So if we can do that, that's to
Okay.
me, that's a success.
Yeah. That.
And yeah, just to be able to listen and be able to get feedback where he's actually heard.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes a person can have things to say, but they don't feel that a person's listening.
Mm-hmm.
So
Definitely.
and after you feel invisible and you start to act out and you're acting out because you want attention.
Yeah.
So and I think that there's no more precious commodity than our kids. So
Yeah.
whatever we have to do to save them and to make sure that America doesn't get her grisly things in them, we have to do.
Yeah.
We have to.
Thank you.
So
Thank
he's
you so
always more
much.
than welcome. Yep.
Yeah. All right. I'll talk to you soon. We'll set up another time to talk.
All right. All
Bye.
right. All right. Yep. Take care. Okay. And tell your
You,
dad I said hello.
okay, I will. You too.
Okay. Bye bye.